before we go on, I have something I'd like to discuss with the court today.
Sure.
I've discussed with you and talked to you over the past year or so about our cash flow,
Sure.
financial statements, and our investment ledgers, how they've gone down. There's been a marked reduction in revenues, as we all know, a large increase in expenditures, and we've worked hard over the past 3 to 4 or 5 years to do with what we have, which we have done. But we have done that through cashing in CDs, the first one being in Judge Pepper's term. And then we received CARES Act money because of COVID, which was extremely helpful. It helped pay for payrolls through the sheriff's office and the jail and several others. And then we've had to tap into our savings at this point. When COVID hit, the accelerated loss of income was absolutely right in our face as to what we were dealing with. And I think that we're at a point where we're going to need to find a revenue to help sustain the county now and years to come. I mean, we're at the point where we are requesting early tax money from the sheriff when he receives it instead of waiting until the monthly report in order to get us through. We don't receive any property tax monies now until November. So those last 3 months leading up to that are pretty sparse. And
seem to grow as well, you know, get longer and...
Correct, yes. I think it's time that we did discuss putting on an occupational license fee, which is the only other source of revenue that we can tap into. That's all we would have. So I think that's where we are. And I've talked to you about cash balances in general. The general fund, part of its revenue, of course, is transfers to other funds. And it has gone up hugely in the last 5 years. To the point that at some point during the year, close to tax time, our balance, cash balance, not budgets, totally two different things, was $32,000. So that's why we had to get tax money early from Patrick, which he was very accommodating with that. That put us through until we got our first actual property tax payment for the month. But that is where we are right now. And if we don't do something, there are going to be cuts that I will have to request from you guys that are going to be very difficult. Because that is where we are now.
Well, I'll say, you know, we have had these discussions. I remember, you know, the county run with reserves 10, 12 years ago, reserves in the amount of $4 million, you know, 4.2. And, you know, they have steadily decreased. I remember sitting with Judge Pepper when we cashed in that CD with the ambitions of replenishing those funds when the next taxes came in. That's just tough to do. You know, I will also say from a judge's standpoint or a managerial position that, you know, I feel we need to consider what our trajectory will be going forward, in the sense that, you know, we are seeing an ever increasing percentage of turnover in terms of employees, a continuous battle in all departments, you know, to patch things up. You know, we did just decrease the average age of our road department equipment from 32 and a half years old to, we're now 17-year-old equipment. So that's at least going in the right direction. But, I don't know, thoughts on it, guys?
I think it's probably fair to say that probably nobody would want to go this route. But I think, it's certainly something that we're going to have to take a good hard look at a lot of numbers and a lot of data. If I'm hearing you correctly, I'm sure September, October are the lean months waiting for tax money to come in. And, like this year, how much more time, how much more leaner times were there compared to years past? Property taxes, number one, we all talked about it, I think, back on the campaigns. We need to pay our employees a decent living wage, not only because they deserve it, but to retain, which I think is what you alluded to. Another thing, we all know what the real estate market has been for the last couple of years. Property has sold for really, really good prices, which helps us. I don't know how much it helps us, but I know it helps us. A big part of our revenue stream is from property taxes. So, I think it's something we just have to at least look at and look at numbers and see. Again, I don't think anybody would want to do this, but is it something that we feel like we have to do? I think that's the question we have to answer.
Well, that's a good point too, that, the period from when things get, Kim and I discussed, things are tight with our reserve amount, seem to only grow in a sense. 5 years ago, it was, hey, things are tight, let's ride out this month. And now it's, going to today, hey, things are tight, let's ride out the next 4 months.
But what we have used are not available anymore. There are no CDs, 200,000 to cash in, that's it. There are, the savings is not there because we just don't have to save. And we'll be getting no more COVID money or anything from that. So that's what has helped us in the past 4 years.
We know how many counties in the state have an occupational?
Yes.
It's like 90 something.
It is 97, I think it was, at the last count. We're one of the few that don't, that have the business type things we have, like the landfill and stuff. Right.
And the real estate property tax has been the same or less for 20 plus years.
We've just kept that even. So
A lot of those counties will only be in the business of roads. And financing it largely with the smaller counties don't have jail, don't have landfill, aren't in the businesses, they don't have law enforcement staffed or equipped, but they don't have animal.
correct.
Well, I think Kim makes a good point too, in that the way this, these COVID federal funds are going to go away. I think we've got 12 months if we haven't seen our last check, which have really greatly assisted us over the last 3 years. But then you look at it from a state level. This legislature just decreased income taxes, predicated on how the budget goes. But I think that's a forewarning of assistance from the state decreasing over the next 2 to 4 years, being your transportation funds, other funding streams, of course, that we derive from the state. So,
well, you've all been to those meetings in like some old, it seems like senators or representatives in Frankfurt are wanting your counties to be more self-reliant.
yes, sir.
All this talking about reducing your state income tax, hopefully down to 4%. can't get an answer out of Frankfurt in regards, okay, I mean, right now, we're getting the money coming from Frankfurt is decreasing. How much more is it going to decrease? I cannot get an answer over there. Well, what about the funding going to the county? Is it going to increase? Is it going to decrease? I do hear talk over there about wanting the county to put special taxes on certain projects and then take the tax off once that project is finished. And I've also talked to a few of them over there. The new retirement system isn't the same as a retired teacher. These new hires do not have the same benefits that I do, or Commissioner O'Hara. And it came right out of one of the senators, I'm paraphrasing his words, well, you know what, we're changing it so they're just going to start putting more money into a 401k. And I said, with what? Well, we got people over there. Patrick, what do you start out with deputy? $13 an hour. How are we going to expect a deputy to put in money into a 401k? And of course, the gentleman was telling me, well, we're going to get pay raises. And I said, why don't you get pay raises first, and then we'll find money down the road. Well, that hasn't happened. So, and then the county only relies on property taxes, insurance, premiums, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what concerns me. It's not what we're doing today, but it's how we leave this county when our positions is over. And that's my concern. Is this county going to be over? It's going to be better, not only 2 years down the road, or 4 years down the road, but 10 years down the road. And it concerns me, and I think you've been on these conversations with Judge Pfeffer, God rest his soul, is the infrastructure. You got to have the infrastructure to acquire businesses. As people well know, is that the property down around Dover, it has infrastructure concerns, and we got some prime sites down there along the river. And then you got a lot of these companies are wanting built ready, not just land, but built ready. So I mean, there's a lot of combinations that we got to consider. Now we do have an industrial park forward, but I think the only thing we have out there is sewer and a concrete pad, and that's about all we have out there. So I mean, this is something we need to think about. But we also have to consider out what you say cut. We have to, everything's on the table. Every department head that you need to talk to, everything's on the table.
And that has been that way.
Oh, I know it has. It's been,
I mean, the
don't get me
last 4 or
wrong.
5 years.
I'm not
has
saying
been
that.
really,
I know, but you can only cut that pie so much.
well,
What's-
that's where we're at. That's
Right.
why, yeah.
But increasing the salaries of the employees, I'm sure we're going to have problems getting labor. But out of respect for what they do, I mean, who wants to run into a situation like the sheriff's for $13 an hour? Or pick up garbage out in the cold, wet, rain, or snow and sleet for $13 an hour. I mean, out of respect for them and the positions and what they do for this county, I think that we really need to look at something to increase our revenue, but in one way or the other. And I don't think we're going to get much help from the state. I really don't.
Well, that's a good point on Jeff is, you know, it used to be you could go out and track somebody, you know, with a job in the private sector paying 15, but pay them in the public sector at a rate of 13.50 or, you know, some lesser amount, but then compensate that employee with, you know, would be state, county benefits. And in today's environment, you know, it's apples and apples. You know, a lot of what we used to be able to point to as you know, retirement, pension, great health insurance plan just isn't there anymore, and or the private sector has matched.
But also, I'm sure you've heard this at the city meetings too. They wouldn't be able to operate without a payroll tax. I mean, and I'm not paraphrasing that. I mean, that's word for word.
You mentioned city commissioner. You know, it occurs to me that the city has a sizable, and I'm not criticizing the city, they've got a sizable surplus. Your taxing districts, which have I'm not criticizing tax districts, they have very small, single purposes, they've got substantial surpluses.
Yes, they do.
And you've got a county government situation where, I don't want to say zero surpluses, but at the size of our budget, it might as well be zero. And you could be faced with, you three and the judge could be faced with the situation, are we going to borrow money not for long-term infrastructure or equipment that has a life of 30 or 40 years, but you're going to borrow money for payroll to keep the lights on? Or are you going to be faced with a situation, state government furloughed its employees. My state employees, we had to lay them off for 2 weeks 3 or 4 years ago because of the state budget.
Sure.
Or if you, I look at Mike Rigdon, come to mind, the jail. If you shut down, you're faced with, we're going to shut down for a month because we can't make payroll. What happens to the jail or sheriff's department or your garbage? I mean, there are things in motion that just can't be, the lights turned off till you can come to cash.
Yeah.
That's a concern I have in my circles. You read about counties and cities, not necessarily some in Kentucky, some elsewhere, but you read about governments in bankruptcy, and it happens.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm not saying we're to that point, but that's what you're considering, whether you can keep the lights on and employees paid in lean times and with insurance, providing your insurance and your retirement rates. The CERS program is better than the KERS program, but I mean that's one thing that's changed, is trying to keep up with those expenditures as they've gone through the roof the last 10 years. I think it's probably as big a issue as anything.
Right.
And you have a contractual obligation to pay that pension fund obligation, no matter what they said that.
Right, because it's not voluntary.
I mean, it's not voluntary. There's just concerns I would have about not having surplus.
Can KCO get us some information about, counties that are similar to us in demographics and what their...
I have researched that, and we're one of those weird counties that has a low to medium population per se, but have more business entities than most. So we are, if we can go by population, but it has nothing to do with budgets. But I've gone through that for several months now, and
Commissioner McKay, you mentioned what they're promoting and the specific model they use is Hardin County in the Ford plant.
yeah.
And if we had a Ford plant, it's a perfect thing. You put occupational tax on the special district that's only, the biggest business ever to start in Kentucky. If you had that, it would be real easy to say we're going to have a special. That's what they're promoting. Not everybody has a Ford plant.
Kim, how much do you anticipate a tax like that would bring in for the county a year?
What I have looked
At
at,
the lowest figure,
3.6 million
Per year?
per year.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How are you going to access that, this taxing? I mean, what rates are you talking about in a minute?
Payroll taxes across the state typically, historically, have been put on by cities, which is a large one. Since 1976, they've had a payroll tax. It is now 1.99% for the cities. It is.
1.99?
Yes. And
What are you proposing?
I am proposing to cover the rest that we are allowed, which is 3% total. So we would put on a 1.01%. So the total of city and county would be 3% total.
So that 1.01 would apply to any employee in Mason County.
Correct.
The 1.99 would apply to any employee that's in the city of Maysville.
And what it is now, it's basically
It
where,
would apply to all.
yeah, it's where you work. So this is for instance, I live in the county, but I work in the city. So I pay the 1.99%. if we do this tax, then I would also be paying the 1.01 county. So if you live in the county at all, everybody would be doing basically the 3%.
If you live out of county.
If you are-
If you live out of county, because we've got a good workforce to come here and use resources and don't pay property taxes, which is all we get from, they would contribute to, revenues and
Right.
garbage and all the things.
So this would allow all citizens that work to contribute. Right now, our major tax base with property tax is only for property owners.
Right.
So if you don't own property, you're contributing very little, if any.
And it's a burden.
This would allow,
Well, I think, especially the last 6-7 years, Maysville, Mason County kind of reascended back to that regional hub. And in my mind, an occupational license makes more sense because we do, to John's point, we do have so many folks traveling into Mason County from contiguous counties that are employed within Mason County that, right now don't own any property, you don't want to say don't contribute, but do utilize our services, utilize our road, utilize EMS, utilize the sheriff.
So are there any exceptions to this payroll tax? Like, for example, construction, they come in here, like on these solar farms?
well, there are exemptions as far as churches. There's
statutory exemptions.
correct,
Okay,
yes.
statutory exemptions.
There's actually a net profit tax that we could put on in addition to this, which the city does a gross receipts tax, gross payroll. And what I've looked at so far, I'm going to recommend and show you all that I don't think that that's necessary. It would include farmers, and I think all of that would be,
Exempt.
I think so. Yeah, if we don't do the net profits tax, those would not be covered.
It would be mom and pop businesses.
Correct.
And farmers alone.
So you're going to include those or not exclude
Not.
those?
Exclude those. And I can get all of this together. I have the information, it's just putting it together.
Can you do us a favor and give us examples? I mean, for example, you're making $500 a week and put it, just
Oh, okay, yeah.
throw examples like that.
If your gross payroll is $500 a week, and I'll just talk about working outside the city limits in the county first. If your gross payroll is $500, your employer would withhold 1.01%, which is what, $5.05 to send to the county quarterly. If you lived within the city limits, or worked within the city limits, your employer would withhold 1.99% of your gross to send to the city and 1.01% of your gross to send to the county.
Good. And then considering the whole, they're already paying the 1.99%.
Right,
And it doesn't benefit you, so you really need to consider the incremental, which is roughly 1%.
Well, these other counties express concern at these meetings too because the cities are expanding, taking in counties to where bringing this industry and the county are not getting any kind of revenue because of that. That's been a major concern ever since I've been on board with these meetings in other counties. Yes, sir. So, I mean,
So let me understand something. So if someone lives in the county and they work in the county, they're going to 3%.
No,
1%.
it's where you work. If they work in the county,
Okay,
it's
but if you
1.99%.
live in Mason County and you work in Brighton, do they take it out because you live in the county?
If Brighton County has something, but not yet.
That's what I
It's
want.
where you work.
It's where you work, right?
Well, I think, look, we're getting very deep into this. I think, we need to step back and remember that anything this body does, I think it's important to get the public's input on it. And so, possibly considering a public meeting of some type to better explain this, maybe put together a presentation.
Are you thinking a special meeting or just a public hearing, informational type stuff? So you wouldn't take any action, you just,
Just for information to think, and just to hear comment, you know.
Information,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the way we should proceed, I don't think. I want you all to realize the importance of doing this. I hate to say it, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean,
So what we'd be doing, I mean, this would be an ordinance with 2 readings, like anything else that we do. Of course, we'll do the public meeting if you want to do that first.
Other counties have implemented an occupational license. Have they just done a first and second reading?
Well, yes, they're not required, but I just remember years ago, before it's anything we ever needed to worry about, there were counties that always did a meeting first in order to inform the public.
Yeah.
They need to be updated, yes.
Well, yeah, I don't think it would be fair to put it on without at least educating them about what's going on.
That'd be more transparent, that's right.
Right. But that's,
It's a tough time.
why don't you have anything about after work hours, public meeting, do a presentation, and take some comments?
Yeah, I think so.
And no action will be taken, in other words, it wouldn't be surprised at the end of the meeting, there's going to be a vote and something happens. It would just be informational for commissioners and you and the public.
I think so. You
can we
know,
set that today?
yeah, I think so. No, I would like to see, you know, a presentation, step by step, what it means, how it's implemented. I think implementation is a big consideration. And then above everything else, see what the public says too.
So you're going to work on putting your facts together
Right.
to bring to the public, just for the information, where we are, where we need to go, this is how we're going to get there.
Right.
I mean, just for this dump truck that we just purchased for the road department, I mean, did it just go up $45,000 to $50,000 in just last year or so? I mean, it's just unbelievable. Now, is this going to be taking place to where we can have a larger audience? Maybe at the library, or maybe at the community college, or we're going to just try to have it here and rotate them in and out, or upstairs, or what do you think, John?
I think it's good years.
Here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a county for the other people. Yeah.
Well, we could move it, couldn't we, if we got closer to,
I think it's always better to plan for a bigger place, and if you have a smaller crowd, it still works. Because I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of people standing and trying to get in the door on cold weather.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the library with the county college should be a better place.
well, the library's having issues right now, aren't they? So a lot of it's closed off.
Yeah.
You don't have to pick the place.
No, just.
Today.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Pick a date.
Yep.
He said D.
What's the 24th look like for everybody? Or the week of the 23rd, how's that?
24th, do with me.
24? How about you guys? 24?
Yeah,
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks from today.
Yes, ma'am.
At what time?
I'd like to do it after hours, yeah.
Yeah.
I think 5:30, yeah. That way people are right after that. Yeah.
5:30?
Yes, ma'am.
Location to be determined,
Location be determined.
and it's the 24th, so it's 2 weeks. Can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point too, Kim. We'll get on the phone with the guys at PAYROLL, see what information they have.
I don't know how many counties do not have an occupational fee. How many cities in this state does not have one?
I'm just curious.
I think the cities,
Most cities do?
well, you know, you have those small cities that.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, I understand. This is where the county, I'm sorry, this is
not statistical, this is just me, what I think, but you won't find hardly any county in the state that doesn't have the impact of a occupational tax by, whether it's the whole county or a portion of it by virtue of the city.
Correct.
I mean, it's very rare that you would have a Kentucky workplace not impacted by an occupational tax of some sort.
I understand.
It's probably like 110,
It's
12 counties that would have some impact, whether it's the whole county or part of the county.
Thank you.
So, we will walk through the presentation together January 24th, 5:30 PM. Public meeting, location to be determined. Thank you, Kim, that's good information.
Sorry.
Thank you, that's good information.
Thank you.
Thanks again for bringing it to our attention.
And news, isn't it?
We cleared off
Everything for yours.
Okay. Next up in the package, guys, you've got the EMS report for information purposes only. Fire Chief Doyle